welcome to Ephemera. I am fantasy author Katie Brisky.
And I'm editor Jen R. Albert.
And welcome back to our virtual home. As the seasons turn, we hope that you are all keeping well and healthy. Welcome to anyone who's joining us for the first time, and welcome back to those who have visited our virtual home before.
For those who are new, Ephemera is an award-nominated reading series chaired by Katie and myself. In the before times, we held events at Glad Day Bookshop, but we've moved online, obviously. Our commitment to celebrating diverse science fiction and fantasy has not changed.
And neither has our commitment to themed events. Wherever you are watching, shout it out with me now. This month's theme is dedication.
We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which Katie and I live and work is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. This land is covered under Treaty 13 and is part of the Dish with One Spoon. The fall equinox will be upon us in a few days, and with that change comes. The air is cooling, leaves are beginning to shed their colors, and everywhere, statues continue to fall. Last month, protesters in Montreal pulled down the statue of Sir John A. Macdonald during a demonstration calling for defunding of the Montreal police. Canada's first Prime Minister, Macdonald, was instrumental in establishing residential schools, a program that has caused untold violence and harm to generations of Indigenous peoples, among other harmful policies. The toppled statue provoked continued national conversations on Canada's colonial legacy and engagement with Indigenous peoples. The current federal administration has made strong statements about their dedication to reconciliation efforts, but their dedication to a violent colonial legacy is on display in places of prominence in countless towns and cities, and is on display in their condemnations of protesters who are tired of it. Thankfully, while the media and politicians debate amongst themselves, activists continue to march in anti-oppression demonstrations in support of Black and Indigenous lives, and in continued opposition to fascism and police states. Nature brings change without us. Summer gives way to fall, whether we like it or not, but social change cannot happen without dedication to action. For settlers living on others' lands out there, we encourage you to learn about the treaties and communities in your own locale, follow and listen to Indigenous activists and leaders, donate to Indigenous-led organizations, and join in demonstrations and marches if and when you can.
A reminder to everyone that our code of conduct is posted online in various places. So if this is your first event, please check it out on Facebook or Twitter.
And a reminder, if you are so inclined, you can still feed Fred the socially distanced, he's in my bubble, don't worry, physically distanced dragon. You can find the link to our Ko-fi at the top of our channel near our banner. There's a little icon, and on our Twitter and our Facebook page for tonight's event. And our Ko-fi is kofi.com/ephemera reading series.
I also wanted to assure you that much like last month, we will have audience participation at this event. So do stay tuned and get excited.
Thank you so much. Let us welcome our first reader. Jordan Ifueko grew up reading comics under a blanket fort, staining every page with fried plantain grease. She writes about magic Black girls who aren't magic all the time, because sometimes we need a freaking vacation, don't we all? If you're interested in her novel Raybearer, read the first chapter on Entertainment Weekly and purchase anywhere books are sold.
Hello there. I'm Jordan Ifueko. Thank you for the introduction. I'm very happy to be here on Ephemera. Did I say that right? Is it Ephemera or Ephemera?
Yes.
Okay. I will be reading to you from the first chapter of Raybearer. So this first chapter is actually available in many different ways, either now, or you can go to Entertainment Weekly, or you can hear Janice Abbott Pratt in the American audiobook. It is wonderful. So without further ado, I will start and read to you from the beginning of Raybearer. I shouldn't have been surprised that fairies exist. When elephants passed by in a lumbering sea beneath my window, flecks of light whispered in the dust, dancing above the rows of tusks and leather. I leaned precariously over the sill, hoping to catch a fleck before a servant wrestled me inside. Shame, shame, Tarisai, my tutors fretted. What would the lady do if you fell? But I want to see the lights, I said. They're only tutsu sprites. A tutor herded me away from the window. Kind spirits. They guide lost elephants to watering holes. Or to lion packs, another tutor muttered, if they're feeling less kind. Magic, I soon learned, was capricious. When I squinted at the swollen trunk of our courtyard baobab tree, a cheeky face appeared. Kie, killer girl, it snickered before vanishing into the bark. I was 7 when the man with cobalt fire wings found me. That night, I had decided to search Swana, the second largest realm in the Erit Empire, for my mother. I had crept past my snoring maids and tutors, stuffed a sack with mangoes, and scaled our mud brick wall. The moon hung high above the savannah when the Alagbato, the fairy, appeared in my path. The light glinted in his gold-flecked eyes, which slanted all the way to his dark temples. He seized the back of my garment, hoisting me up for examination. I wore a wrapper the color of banana leaves wound several times beneath my arms, leaving my shoulders bare. The Alagbato watched me, amused, as I punched and kicked the air. I'm in bed at Bikina House, I told myself. My heart pounded like a fist on a goatskin drum. I bit my cheek to prove I was dreaming. I'm wrapped in gauzy mosquito nets, and the servants are fanning me with palm fronds. I can smell breakfast in the kitchens. Maize porridge, stewed matemba fish. But my cheek began to throb. I was not in bed. I was lost in the balmy Swanian grasslands, and this man was made of flames. Hello, Tarisai. His Sahara breath warmed on my beaded braids. Just where do you think you're going? How do you know my name? I demanded. Were Alagbatos all-knowing like Am the storyteller? I am the one who gave it to you. I was too angry to absorb this reply. Did he have to be so bright? Even his hair shimmered, a luminous thicket around his narrow face. If our compound guard spotted him, I sighed. I had barely made it a mile into the savannah. Capture now would be humiliating. My tutors would lock me up again, and this time, every window in Bikina House would be nailed shut. I'm not allowed to be touched, I snapped, clawing at the Alagbato's grip. His skin felt smooth and hot, like clay left to harden in the sun. Not allowed? You are small enough to be carried. I am told human children need affection. Well, I'm not human, I shot back in triumph, so put me down. Who told you that, little girl? No one, I admitted after a pause, but they all say it behind my back. I'm not like other children. I'm going to stop real quick here because I just got news from our host that there's an error on this stream.
Right.
Are we good to keep going? Clear now? Okay. So I'll repeat the last slide real quick. Not allowed. You are small enough to be carried. I am told human children need affection. Well, I'm not human, I shot back in triumph, so put me down. Who told you that, little girl? No one, I admitted after a pause, but they all say it behind my back. I'm not like other children. This was possibly a lie. The truth is, I'd never seen other children, except in the market caravans that passed Bikina House from a distance. I would wave from my window until my arms grew sore, but they never waved back. The children would stare straight past me, as if our compound, manor, orchard, and houses enough to make a small village, were invisible to anyone outside. Yes, the Alagbato agreed grimly. You are different. Would you like to see your mother, Tarisai? I stopped resisting at once. My limbs hung limp as vines. Do you know where she is? My mother was like morning mist, here, then gone, vanished in clouds of jasmine. My tutors bowed superstitiously whenever they passed her wood carving in my study. They called her the lady. I delighted in our resemblance. The same high cheekbones, full lips, and fathomless black eyes. Her carving watched as my study brimmed with scholars from sunup to moonrise. They chattered in dialects from all 12 realms of the Erit Empire. Some faces were warm and dark, like mine and the ladies'. Others were pale as goat's milk, with eyes like water, or russet and smelling of cardamom, or golden with hair that flowed like ink. The tutors plied me with riddles, shoving diagrams into my hands. Can she solve it? Try a different one. She'll have to do better than that. I didn't know what they were looking for. I only knew that once they found it, I would get to see the lady again. This will be the day, the tutors gushed when I excelled at my lessons. The lady will be so pleased. Then the palisade gates of Bikina House opened, and my mother glided inside, detached as a star. Her shoulders glowed like embers. Wax-dyed cloth clung to her torso like a second skin, patterns zigzagging in red, gold, and black. She held me to her breast, a feeling so lovely I wept as she sang, "Me, mine, she's me and she is mine." The lady never spoke when I demonstrated my skills. Sometimes she nodded as if to say, "Yes, perhaps." But in the end, she always shook her head. No, not enough. I recited poems in 8 different languages, hurled darts into minuscule targets, solved giant logic puzzles on the floor, but each time it was no, no, and no again. Then she vanished in that haze of heady perfume. At age 5, I had begun to sleepwalk, padding barefoot through the smooth plaster halls of our manor. I would peer in each room, walking and whimpering for my mother until a servant carried me to bed. They were always careful never to touch my skin. "I cannot find your mother," the Alagbato told me the night of my attempted escape, "but I can show you a memory." Not in my head. He dodged my attempt to seize his face. I never store secrets on my person. The lady had forbidden people from touching me for a reason. I could steal the story of almost anything, a comb, a spear, a person. I touched something and knew where it had been a moment before. I saw with their eyes, if they had eyes, sighed with their lungs, felt what their hearts had suffered. If I held on long enough, I could see a person's memories for months, even years. Only the lady was immune to my gift. I knew every story in Bikina House except hers. "You will have to take my memory from the place where it happened," said the Alagbato, setting me lightly in the tall grass. "Come, it is not far." He offered a bony hand, but I hesitated. "You're a stranger," I said. "Are you sure?" he asked, and I felt the odd sensation of peering into a mirror. He smiled, lips pursed like a meerkat's. "If it makes you feel any better, my name is Melu, and thanks to that woman, I am not an Alagbato." His smile soured into a grimace. "Not anymore." And I think that's 10 minutes. I timed it earlier, but thank you so much for having me.
Such gorgeous, rich descriptions of the lady. Oop. I think Katie, you seem... I cannot hear you.
There we go.
Oh, okay.
Goodness gracious. We've been plagued by technical difficulties, but the amazing thing is that we are dedicated to overcoming them.
That's all you need.
Ah, see what I did there? I worked our theme in. That's my favorite. It's maybe a good thing that you didn't hear me because I was just gushing incoherently over Jordan's work. That was pretty much it. So thank you so much, Jordan. We really appreciate your being here tonight.
Thank you.
Now we did promise you audience participation, and the technical ghosts are not gonna stop that either. So there's a few ways to think about the theme of dedication. And one of them, of course, as we all know as book people, is book dedications. Now, in your wanderings on the internet, I'm sure you have all seen some great book dedications. We've collected some of them, and we're going to have a dedication tournament.
Who is the most dedicated? Wait, that's not really how it works. Vote on Twitter, or you can vote in our chat. Our Twitter is @Ephemera Series. Please follow us on Twitter if you haven't. You can also just type your answer into the chat, and we will collect all the votes together. And in the end, we will crown a dedication champion. So who are our first contestants?
In this first round, in this corner, we have the dedication to E.E. Cummings' poetry collection, No Thanks. It is dedicated to the 14 publishing houses who rejected it, which is a move. It's definitely a move. So, no thanks to Farrar and Reinhardt, Simon & Schuster, Coward McCann, Limited Editions, Harcourt Brace, Random House, Equinox Press, Smith & Has, Viking Press, Knopf, Dutton, Harper's, Scribner's, and Kobichi Fried. That's the dedication.
Facing off, the dedication to Rick Riordan's The House of Hades. To my wonderful readers, sorry about that last cliffhanger. Well, no, not really. Ha 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 ha. But seriously, I love you guys.
So who will advance to the next round? Will it be E.E. Cummings' Petty Flex or Riordan's Loving Troll?
Cast your vote now.
And while you do that, I would like to introduce this month's artist, Lana Kamarić. Burlington-based artist Lana Kamarić has been painting since she had the motor skills to hold a brush. While she specializes in oils, this painter does not shy away from experimenting with various mediums and often incorporating more than one into her pieces. Her cosmic, surrealist style creates a visual representation of abstract concepts that transcend the physics of our reality. Originally from Sarajevo, Bosnia, this artist developed wanderlust from childhood and uses any excuse to travel the world and discover all that she can about it. She approaches each painting as an adventure into the unknown, exploring her subconscious and using art as a tool to understand herself and the world around her. Welcome. You are good to go anytime, my friend.
Oh, hello. So earlier this year, I did a painting series called Cave Art. And due to the pandemic, I wasn't able to do a physical show for it. So I decided to do a virtual exhibition as well as a studio tour. So this is the edited version of that. If you would like to see the full video as well as the paintings themselves, you can do that on my website provided at the end of the video. Enjoy.
Are we back?
We are back.
Can I say things again?
Yes.
Right. Well, that was very, very cool. So thank you very much. And you can catch the entire show on YouTube. That is Cave Art. And as you saw at the very end of the video there, you can find more of Lana's art at www.lanakamarić.com. Now, I am sure you were all very curious to know who won our first vote. Jen, have the votes been tallied?
They have been tallied, and the winner is E.E. Cummings.
Yay, pettiness!
It is time for the next set of dedication competitors. Get those voting fingers ready. First up, we have a dedication from the Grand Dame of Mystery herself, Agatha Christie. Hercule Poirot's Christmas is dedicated to her brother-in-law, James, and reads, in part, "You complained that my murders were getting too refined, anemic, in fact. You yearned for a good, violent murder with lots of blood. A murder where there was no doubt about its being a murder. So this is your special story, written for you. I hope it may please."
And if that wasn't heartwarming enough, our challenger is an unattributed dedication from an unknown financial textbook. In memory of a best friend and companion, Tinker. And there's a photo of a dog. It's a corgi. Look, I'll hold it up so you can see. That's what the dog looks like in the dedication. So, who is going to proceed to the championship round, my friends? Is it going to be Murder or Tinker? Murder or Tinker? You'll just have to vote on Twitter and in the chat.
Meanwhile, our next reader is Matt Wallace. Matt Wallace is a Hugo winner and the author of Rancor, Life in Brudge City, the Sin de Jour series, Savage Legion, and Bump. He's also penned over 100 short stories in addition to writing for film, television, and video games. In his youth, he traveled the world as a professional wrestler, as well as an unarmed combat and self-defense instructor. Don't mess with this guy. Before retiring to write full-time, he lives in Los Angeles with his wife, Nikki. Matt.
Yes, I do. Thank you so much for the introduction. And may I just say that anyone who doesn't vote for the puppy is my enemy. I'm just going to put that out on Maine right there. Very honored to have been invited here, especially in such talented company. I'm a big fan of everybody who's here. I am going to be reading from my debut, so shiny, you gotta get it right angle. My debut epic fantasy novel, Savage Legion, that is out right now from Saga Press. And going with the theme of dedication, I'm going to be reading from a chapter in which one of the main characters has been tasked with some mysterious tests to ascend through the ranks of the mysterious organization that runs the empire in the novel. She was taken in as a servant, and they realized that she's got this very brilliant mind, a lot of potential, and they're giving her the opportunity to rise through their ranks. So this is a chapter called The Jeopardy Room, which is a title that I cribbed shamelessly from the Twilight Zone, and I'm not too proud to admit it. And yeah, so we're just going to jump right in, and hopefully it tantalizes you to want to read more of the book. It isn't too confusing out of context, and I'm filling time because I don't know how long the part I've chosen to be is going to go. So, but here we go. So this is from Savage Legion. The bells summon Diawanda Sanitation on the 3rd level. She's been there dozens of times before, and aside from the smell, she always finds it as fascinating as any level in the keep. It's there that the cadre tests different means of disposing and even utilizing waste, from rotting food to fallen leaves to filthy water to every resident's supper from the night before. The last time she carried a message there, they were working on a new kind of cistern that used a combination of potions to turn solid refuse into liquid waste so it could be more easily drained. The assemblers hadn't quite perfected the balance of the potions yet, but just the idea of such a thing lit a fire inside Diawan's head. She rose her tender through the circles of stone that had become so familiar to her in such a short time. She's not certain when these corridors began to feel like home, or even when home became an idea she both accepted and even craved, but she's never felt more safe or welcomed or content in her entire life. The door to sanitation is open, as most of the doors in the planning cadre are. Diane begins to purposefully breathe through her mouth rather than her nose, and wonders what sort of invention she'll witness today. The part of her mind that seems to know things before she does recognizes what's happening as soon as she rolls through the door. It takes the rest of Diane only a moment to catch up. Sanitation is gone. There should be a wide open workspace filled with dozens of assemblers performing at least half that many tasks. Instead, Diane finds herself in a cramped antechamber no longer than a closet, staring at the entrance to a narrow corridor so long she can't truly distinguish where or how it ends. A single torch in a single stone sconce lights the space. That becomes even more important in the next moment when the door behind Diane slams shut. She peers over her shoulder, staring at the heavy slab of wood and metal. She hears a heavy metal snap, followed by a brief grinding of steel against steel. It doesn't take a mind as keen as hers to know the door has just been locked from the outside. Diane's heart begins beating faster as she realizes she's stopped breathing for several moments. She inhales sharply and grips the edges of her tender's paddles. "All right," she whispers to herself in the darkened space lit only by a few gentle flames. "All right." Diane turns from the door and rows her tender forward, halting at the threshold of the corridor. Instead of staring down its pitched length, she examines the entrance and what she can see of its structure. The corridor is far too narrow to permit her tender. It looks barely wide enough to allow both her shoulders movement through its confines, and that's if she were to drag herself over the ground as she used to in the streets and alleys of the capital. She finds the very thought of doing so here now fills her with dread and something deeper, a sense of intense loathing, frustration, and even anger. Diane pushes herself up on her tender's platform, straining to reach the torch on the wall above her. I looked up at the chat and lost my place. I'm so sorry. Push herself all above her. Grunting from the effort, she manages to snatch the torch from its sconce without losing her grip and dropping its flaming head. Leaning over the front of her tender, Diane extends the torch to the bottom of the corridor. What she sees first causes her to squint, then makes her eyes widen in disbelief. Most of either wall is smooth. However, beginning perhaps a foot from the floor, sharp, jagged spikes begin protruding for both sides of the corridor. Some are set lower and some higher, but a spike on the opposite wall matches each one, so closely no human body could fit between them. What's more, the floor between the corridor walls is also covered in spikes, much shorter than the ones above, but so many of them that a person with the full use of their legs couldn't take a step without piercing their foot. She couldn't even crawl under the wall spikes. This seems impossibly cruel. It seems to go against everything she's heard and experienced in her time in the planning cadre. This is the craze Diane glimpsed so often in the streets, from her many hiding places, and while sliding away from agents and drunkards and sneak thieves. It's a test, she reminds herself. This is the test Edgar talked about. This is the test they give planners. The knowledge, the certainty of it, brings her little comfort. Clever puzzles and the comfort of a soft bed that belongs to her seem like a very distant memory, something that happened in another place, or perhaps another life. Either you want this or you don't, another voice that sounds much like Edgar's goads her. You can pound on the door and beg to be let out of this place. They will open it. You know they will. You can go right back to sweeping the floor and delivering parchment scribbles and the inventions of others. You can spend the rest of your life here in comfort, like blind old Mackay, toiling every day in his kitchen, or the one-armed mute who tends the sconces, never having to face another test again. You can still be Edgar's favorite pet. You don't have to do this. She doesn't have to, but she wants to. For the first time, Diane admits to herself that she wants what Edgar has dangled in front of her. In truth, she wants it even more than that. She doesn't just want to be part of the cadre, and she doesn't just want to be a planner. Diane wants to be Edgar. She wants to be the one who can reach into the gutters of the Capitol and scoop out the unwanted at will. She could do so much more with that power than he has. Her mind begins to unfurl such pictures, such fantasies of the knowledge she could attain, the wonders she could create, and the souls she could save. Diane forces that mental scroll to wind back so she can stuff it away in a corner of her head somewhere. Desire is dangerous, especially for someone like her. It can drive you insane, or worse, it can drive you to act foolishly, even lethally against your own survival. Is that what I'm doing now? She wonders. And I think that's where I'm gonna cut it off there. I hope that wasn't too short, but that's my time. Thanks, everybody.
Ah, that was amazing, Matt. Wait, can we see how shiny it is again? Can
You can
hold it up
absolutely.
again?
I'd rather do that than read any day of the week. It's very shiny.
Whoa.
I'm very sad that more people can't go to bookstores and just wander around for hours and catch it on a shelf. But yeah, it's a very shiny book.
And the prose is very shiny too. I was sitting there being very envious of your writing chops.
Oh, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Well, I could gush forever, but we do have a vote to tally. So the votes are in, and our victor was Agatha Christie's murder dedication. I'm so sorry, Matt, but the puppy didn't make it. So yes, we've chosen pettiness and murder as our finalists.
Okay.
E. Cummings and Agatha Christie. It's just that kind of night. So to remind you all, our first, I guess contender, it's not a champion yet, our first contender for the dedication champion title is E. Cummings with the poetry collection No Thanks, dedicated to the 14 publishing houses who rejected it. And if you missed it the first time, we're gonna get all 14 once more. I'll go very quickly. No thanks to Farrar and Reinhardt, Simon and Schuster, or that motorcycle outside my house, Coward McCann, Limited Editions, Harcourt Brace, Random House, Equinox Press, Smith & Has, Viking Press, Knopf, Dutton, Harper's, Scribner's, Kovici Fried. And our next contender for the title is
Agatha Christie. For Hercule Poirot's Christmas, it is dedicated to her brother-in-law James, and I will read it again. You complained that my murders were getting too refined, anemic in fact. You yearned for a good violent murder with lots of blood, a murder where there was no doubt about its being murder. So this is your special story written for you. I hope it may please. So, of these two, you must take to Twitter or take to the chat and tell us who our dedication champion is.
Before we do that, it brings me great pleasure to introduce our final reader tonight, Rebecca Roanhorse. Rebecca Roanhorse is the New York Times bestselling author of Trail of Lightning, Storm of Locusts, Star Wars, Resistance Reborn, and Race to the Sun. She has won the Nebula, Hugo, and Locus Awards for her fiction, and was the recipient of the 2018 Astounding Award for Best New Writer. Her forthcoming book, Black Sun, is out in October. She lives in New Mexico with her family. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. I'm not on the screen yet, but I'm going to talk because I think there's a delay.
Yeah, there's about 30 seconds. You're
Okay,
good.
awesome. Good. So happy to be here. Excited to do a little reading for you tonight. I'm actually going to read from my upcoming new novel, Black Sun. This is an ARC, but it too is shiny. That's probably because Matt and I are both publishing our books with Saga Press. So we are actually publishing house siblings. So that's cool. I guess they like to do a shiny book, huh? So theme, dedication. So what I wanted to read to you tonight, let me see. Black Sun is a big epic fantasy, big sprawling epic fantasy that follows 4 different point of view characters. I'm going to read to you from 2 of the 2 different characters who both possess an epic amount of dedication. I can't believe I did that, but there it is. Okay, so we're going to start, actually the first one at chapter 1. Trying to decide what I want to read. I'm going to start actually with the little, what do you call this? The little opening thing, the epigrams thing. I don't know. They don't pay me to know that stuff. I just write it. You are the substitute, the surrogate of Tolkien Nawake, the lord of the near and far. You are the seat, the throne from which he rules. You are his flute, the mouth from which he speaks. He speaks within you. He makes you his lips, his jaw, his ears. He also makes you his fangs, his claws, for you are his wild beast. You are his eater of people. You are his judge. That's from the Florentine Codex, book 4, folio 42, rear. Chapter 1. O sun, you cast cruel shadow, black char for flesh, the tint of feathers. Have you forsaken mercy? From collected lamentations from the night of knives. Today he would become a god. His mother had told him so. Drink this, she said, handing him a cup. The cup was long and thin and filled with a pale, creamy liquid. When he sniffed it, he smelled the orange flowers that grew in looping tendrils outside his window, the ones with the honey centers. But he also smelled the earthy sweetness of the bell-shaped flowers that she cultivated in her courtyard garden, the one he was never allowed to play in. And he knew that there were things he could not smell in the drink, secret things, things that came from the bag his mother wore around her neck, that whitened the tip of her fingers and his own tongue. Drink it now, Serapio, she said, resting a hand briefly against his cheek. It's better to drink it cold, and I've put more sweet in it this time, so you can keep it down better. He flushed, embarrassed by her mention of his earlier vomiting. She had warned him to drink the morning's dose of poison quickly, but he had been hesitant and sipped it instead, and he had heaved up some of the drink in a milky mess. He was determined to prove himself worthy this time, more than just a timid boy. He grasped the cup between shaking hands, and under his mother's watchful gaze, he brought it to his lips. The drink was bitter cold, and as she had promised, much sweeter than the morning's cup. All of it, she chided, as his throat protested and he started to lower the vessel. Else it won't be enough to numb the pain. Chapter 3. We're going to switch characters. Narampa was not dead, even though the witch Tatea thought her so. She could not move her limbs or open her eyes, and her breath came out in an almost imperceptible wheeze. But she could hear, and more so feel, everything that was happening to her. She felt the apprentice's hands, two girls who strained and heaved as they dragged her from the river. She heard Tatea order them to build up the fire, and then she breathed in the smoke the witch fanned from the flames. She screamed without sound as the hot, thick drip of blood against her naked chest, and then as Tatea's command to her apprentices to spread the blood evenly over Narampa's supine form. And as the witch covered her with a blanket, pausing only to pry her mouth open and place a salt rock under her tongue, Narampa wept unnoticed tears. Narampa had been a child once, long before she joined the priesthood, before she learned to read the course of the sun and command sky-made queens, and she had been a beggar in the poor district of Tova, called Coyote's Maw. Often when the streets were quiet before the evening crowd of gamblers, tourists, and pleasure seekers arrived in the Maw, Narampa had sat on the westernmost ledge of the top level of the district and peered out over the dizzying distance that separated her home from the wealthier neighborhoods. Looking out over the city, she had dreamed of crossing the woven suspension bridges that swayed like spider silk in the gentle canyon breezes and allowed free travel among all the districts but hers, of exploring the wide roads and stately adobe brick homes, some 4 and 5 stories high, not as a servant like her mother, but as someone who belonged there, and brashest of all, of being a scholar in the celestial tower in the district of Otsa. She was only 10 then, her destiny far from decided. She had not yet learned that she was poor, and that people like her only went to the celestial tower as servants, or that once you were poor, people hated you for it, even when you weren't poor anymore. She remembered a summer night she sat with her family around the cooking coals they shared with their neighbors, talking about how she wished to study the stars. In the sky-made districts, the scions ate on great communal terraces with kitchens that produced food for hundreds. But in the Maw, people kindled small dugout fires in the streets where they roasted ground cornmeal or buried whole corn ears in hot ash to bake overnight. At her words, her mother had exchanged a mysterious glance with her father, and he had nodded. It is good fortune that you would talk of studying the stars tonight, Nara, her mother said, her voice high with excitement. I spoke to the matron I serve, and she remembered you and how smart you are and how well you learn, and she has agreed to sponsor you at the Celestial Tower. Narampa felt dizzy. I'm going to be a scholar priest? She knew there were other disciplines one could learn at the tower, healing, writing, and history, even the art of death. But all she had ever wanted was to study the sun and moon and the movement of the stars. Her father laughed. Oh, no, little one. They would never let you study there. You are to work. You will serve the priest, help cook their meals, wash their vestments, clean their floors. Her stomach dropped in disappointment. But her mother gave her father a long look. Perhaps you will learn something if you listen closely. A servant can learn a lot through observation if she is quiet. Then I will be quiet, she vowed solemnly, and I will learn everything. That's not fair, her younger brother Denaoche protested. Why does she get to go and not me? Who wants to be a priest when you could be a warrior? Her other brother Akil asked. Narampa bit her lip. Being Sky Maid was exciting. Water Strider was her favorite clan, and its matron was the one her mother served. It ruled the district of Chitadi, which was closest to the maw. She could see the curved edges of its cliffs when she gazed across the narrow canyon that divided them, its great sky blue banners cascading down the sides of adobe buildings between dripping green vines and colorful tendrils of starburst flowers. She could even see trees. Trees. The maw had no trees. Chitadi was a garden of impossible green and growth, with a waterfall that ran right through it like a living street before tumbling to the river that bisected Tova below. When her mother talked of it, she imagined Chitadi was something out of a story, a place she could only hear about but never touch. But now, what clan would you be, Akil? She asked. Why would anyone want to be anything but Golden Eagle? Denajoche interrupted. Everyone knows they are the most powerful of the 4 clans. Not if we go to war, Akil counted. You want to ride on the back of a water insect when we go to war? He lifted his sharp chin. I'll be on the back of an eagle, shitting down on you. Not a water strider, a winged serpent. Same difference. Akil lunged at his little brother, but Denaoche easily dodged his half-hearted blow. What's this talk of war, their father said, rough anger coloring his voice. Tova does not war. We have been at peace for 300 years since the priesthood united us. Akil's the one who wants to fight. I want to rule. Denaoche's face was so smug that Narampa could only laugh. Boys don't rule in Tova, Akil counted. Besides, all you could ever rule was a sewer pile, you and your shitting birds. I'm going to the war college in Hokkaido with the scions where I'll learn to fight. Enough, their father muttered. You don't know what you're talking about, either of you. Do I have fools for sons, dreaming of being lords and warriors? You'll be lucky to find work in the mines or the fields in the east. The war college is not for the likes of you, Akil. If war comes, you will be nothing but fodder, or worse, a sacrifice on a foreign altar where the sun priest has not brought enlightenment. And you, Oche. Akil's right. The only place you'll ever rule is right here in the maw, and there's nothing here worth reigning over but trash. Jema, her mother chided her husband. They're only children. They're too young for nonsense, or too old for nonsense. He glared at his brood one by one. Remember well, you're no Sky Maid scions, and you never will be. Get those thoughts out of your head or court misery the rest of your life. Silence fell across the small family in the wake of her father's reprimand. Her mother said nothing, but Narampa could see her disapproval clear enough in the set of her jaw, the look in her eyes. When I go to the Celestial Tower in Otsa, I will bring you all to visit me, Narampa offered, trying to soothe the mood. I said enough fool talk, her father grumbled, sounding more tired than angry. You too, Nara. No more. Her promise to her brothers had not come to fruition, of course, not only because the riders of the Sky Maid clan's beasts were lords, and even among the scions and specially chosen from their clans to train for years before they were allowed mounts, but also because by the time Narampa did leave her home and move to Otsa to become not just a servant, although she had been that, and not just a dedicant, although she was that too, but the sun priest, its very highest honor. By that time, her older brother was dead, and her younger brother dead in spirit. She was not sure of her parents' final fates, but she assumed them dead too. She had never gone back to find out. Because her father had been right, the truth was that as much as she loved that city, the city did not love her back. It had little use for a maw beggar girl, some use for a clever servant who caught the attention of an aging and eccentric sun priest, more use for an unlikely dedicant who had an uncanny ability to read the stars and outshine her society classmates, and a final and blistering use for an idealistic young sun priest who thought she could make a change to her beloved city, but instead only made enemies. Again and again, Tova forced her to earn its regard, and she had done so every time. She comforted herself with the fact that she had not done it for glory or for power, but for the worst reason of all, faith. Faith in this place she called home. But, she thought, as she lay under the witch's blanket, plagued by memories of her childhood and her foolish fantasies, blood drying on her skin and salt burning her mouth, faith is not going to save me now. And that's it.
Oh,
No, I
you're
can't hear
muted again,
anybody.
Katie.
Yeah.
It should be
No,
okay.
I will not be silenced. I just won't be. Again, I was incoherently gushing. This seems to be a theme. That was amazing. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Jen, are the votes in?
The votes are in. But first, we'd like to maybe hear some dedications from our authors here, if they have them. Is anybody game for reading your dedication or dedication to any of your books? Yes, Matt?
Matt, I will ask you to unmute. And Jordan, let's just unmute everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone's unmuted. Party time.
Wild.
Okay, am I on the? I'm not
Yeah,
actually
you're good.
watching the live stream.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay, so the dedication in Savage Legion is for Lathon Wilkerson, my original instructor in savagery. Lathon was the head trainer at the wrestling school that I attended, where I learned to be a pro wrestler. And the commander of the Savage Legion, the novel, is named after him. And he loves the fact that the character he's named after is a huge asshole. Loves it.
Well.
Aw, that's also heartwarming. Jordan, I think I saw your hand go up. Did you want to share yours?
Yeah, sure. My dedication is not to anyone specific. The dedication is for the kids scanning fairy tales for a hero with a face like theirs, and for the girls whose stories we compressed into pities and wonders, triumphs and cautions without asking even once for their names.
That's beautiful.
Oh, that's nice. I'll do mine.
Yeah, please.
All right, so mine is for that kid in Texas who always dreamed in epic. So I actually dedicated it to myself.
Nice.
Yeah.
Power move.
I know, right?
Some really good contenders.
Can I share one of my favorite
Yes.
dedications
Yes.
by just an author? One of my favorite authors is the MG and kids author Shannon Hale. She's just an absolute wonderful person. And she wrote a book called Austen Land about someone going to a Jane Austen themed resort. And the dedication of this fabulous book is to Colin for It Wouldn't Work. I'm married, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Colin.
Collecting our
Colin.
defenders. So I'm so glad you brought it as a bonus. That is amazing.
Yes.
Cool. Well, thank you for sharing your dedication, my friends, and thank you for sharing your words and your books with us tonight as well. Let's see who's won our tournament, though, before we turn you all loose back on the interwebs. You listened, you judged, you voted, and the winner is E.E. Cummings.
Yay.
Oh, pettiness over murder. Pettiness always wins.
But of course, the true winner tonight is all of you. It's our fabulous readers. And then we'd like to make a dedication tonight too, wouldn't we?
Oh, the most important dedication of the night is this. We'd like to dedicate Ephemera to all of you. Without you, there is no Ephemera. So until next time, please follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram @Ephemera Series, and please subscribe to this YouTube page. We'd really like to get over 100 and get our own little
You'd like
URL.
a custom URL.
Yes.
If you get over 100 subscribers, you get a custom URL, and we're so close now.
Pettiness always wins. So we'd also like to thank the Ontario Arts Council for their funding assistance and Gangway Theatre Company for help with our performances.
We'd also like to thank our fabulous readers and artists. Round of applause, please. And of course, our friends, families, loved ones, and you. Thank you for staying with us. We will see you next time on October 21st. Good night.
Everyone.